All right. Appreciate you having me back. It's good to be in here after a great conference win. We fully expected it was going to be quite the battle, and it certainly turned out that way. Like Ringo says, it don't come easy, and that didn't, but it was a very satisfying win. I think all three phases felt good about making contributions to the win, and yet all three phases, I can tell you this week, are all focused on working to improve. Tell you what, the crowd is really something, and this is 3 years in for me, and it just never gets old. You know, you walk in there and you feel that electricity in Williams-Brice, and it's just special every time. So grateful for that. The other interesting thing about the game was that some unique situations arose, and we practice those things, we emphasize those things. You show clips from different games over the course of the season and meetings and so forth, trying to prepare your guys for the things that might happen once or twice in a season, not knowing when they might come. And this was one of those games where it happened. We had a kickoff after a penalty from the 50 that we successfully executed, and were able to down the ball around the 15-yard line, which was good to see. And then the hands team at the end of the game, and be in position there to successfully field that. And what a great moment for DK. He had the tough fumble earlier, and then to bounce back and be in position to make such a meaningful play there. And, your hands team is something you get a chance to cover in a meeting for maybe 2 or 3 minutes at the end of the week and get a few reps towards the end of the week of practice. And then you've got to go out there and look like you know what you're doing when the game's on the line. So I was really proud of our kids there. We had the explosive punt return, and then shortly thereafter we had a sudden change situation where it was a turnover, and it felt like that defense had just gotten over to the bench, and then they had to hustle out there on the field and go play again with the ball already in plus territory for the opponent. So a lot of those types of things that are really good to learn from and just solidify, the emphasis that we put on them during the week. I thought Kai had a really solid night, 48-yard average, and we ended up netting 44 against a really good punt returner, so that was encouraging. And then, to me, one of the unsung heroes of the game was Mitch Jeter. He hit touchbacks all night. He did have the one kickoff out of bounds, which you never want to see, but I think we all appreciate now what a tremendous player number 5 was for Mississippi State, and the fact that we were able to negate him as a kick returner might have been one of the keys to winning that game. So I was proud of Mitch. So a good win, and one of those wins that you come in on Sunday and you're able to remain humble from, and then move on to this week's opponent. So they say nothing's certain in life except death and taxes. Well, I'll add another layer to that, and that is Tennessee having a great punt returner. And it is just amazing to me when you turn on the video every year, it just seems like they roll the next guy through. It seems to me like it's a waiting list for a country club or something. Son, you're a great punt returner, but I'm very sorry. You're going to have to come back and see us in about 2 years, and then here we are. We'll be waiting for you then. And it really doesn't matter what the guy's number is and where he came from, how long he's been there. They have a guy, it seems like every year, that you struggle to tackle in a phone booth. And this guy, number 3, D. Williams, it started last year, and it's clearly continued. He is absolutely dynamic. He's averaging over 21 yards per return this year. His career average is up around 20. He's had several long returns. The opening game of the season against Virginia, he just tore those guys apart. So he will be a huge challenge for us this week. But this is also a unit that's blocked punts every season. So they're as much of a threat to come after you as they are to set up returns and to get him going. He's also a very good kickoff returner. He reminds me a lot of UNC's guys in terms of body type and just running through the first tackler and very good balance and running behind his pads and gaining those yards after contact on kickoff returns as well. So, all right, so moving on to their punter. Okay, so you guys are well aware of my classic rock passion and so forth, and one-hit wonders and things of that nature. So, Beds Are Burning was a song by Midnight Oil, 1987, one of my top 5 one-hit wonders of all time. And I bring that up because they were an Australian band, okay? And, we have the British invasion from back in the 60s, with the Beatles and the Stones and the Who and the Animals and so forth. And then you have the 2020s where you have the Australian invasion of punters in the United States and specifically in the SEC. This is the 3rd week in a row that we've seen Australian punters. So you had the British invasion, you now have the Australian invasion, and in between, we had Olivia Newton-John and Mel Gibson and Nicole Kidman. Okay, so this guy, he's like the 8th wonder of the world. He can roll in both directions and punt equally well with either leg in both directions. So normally, you're playing against a right-footed punter. And if he's a rugby guy as well, you have your angle launch points, and then you know he's going to roll in one direction if he's going to rugby punt. Well, this guy can go in either direction, and they do it about 50-50. So this is like, if any of you are old enough to remember when Emeril Lagasse had his show, it's like kicking it up a notch in terms of what you have to prepare for. Just to be sound to start. And then you've got to figure out, okay, how are we going to apply pressure? How are we going to return whatever else that we're doing? So that's, that's kind of next level stuff that we're going to see this week and you guys are going to see watching the game. Really good players across all their units, great speed on their kickoff coverage. Their kids play hard. You see it on their PAT field goal block unit, whether it's the first one of the game, the last one of the game. They are getting great penetration. They got a hand on a couple against Florida a couple weeks ago. So this is a team I have a lot of respect for, and it certainly presents a challenging week for us from a preparation standpoint.
Pete, first of all, Midnight Oil's Truganini is also an underrated banger.
Okay.
Special teams hasn't been bad. In fact, it's been good. I think that it just hasn't been spectacular like it was so many times last year. Overall view through 4 games, where do you think special teams has been?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. It has been solid, but we're certainly gonna keep pushing to improve and keep pushing to try to make a difference. And sometimes that is, a gadget play, but more often, and I know I've said this many times in here, it's just about playing good, sound football and doing your job and playing within yourself. I think we've done more of the latter to this point in the season than we have maybe some of the gadgets. And that's not that we haven't been aggressive in calling some of that stuff. There's many guys that we need to continue to bring along, and there's many guys that I'm continuing to try to push out of their comfort zones to become effective at their roles on special teams, and there's many of them that are not there yet. So it has been a challenge, but that's why they put coach in front of your name, and every year is different. And I wish DK Joyner was starting on 4 special teams like he was last year. That's just not in the cards for us right now. So there's some young guys that are in his place that we're trying to bring along, and there's some guys that are maybe in new starting roles on offense and defense that we're still counting on to play on a unit or two, and they're learning how to maintain that balance of playing 60 or 70 snaps on defense and still being really good on the punt team. So it's for me, it's exhausting at times, but this is why we do what we do, and we got to keep pushing these guys every day to keep getting better.
Kind of on that same thread, Kai has his first incomplete pass of his career against Mississippi State, just with some of those gadget plays. How much of those hitting is luck versus things that you guys can actually change?
I'm not big on luck. I'm big on preparation. And so we felt really good about calling that going into the game. And I certainly felt like we practiced it enough and had the timing down. But, it's always a little bit different when the lights go on out there. So, we certainly don't regret calling it. And I thought it certainly had a chance to work. So, that's us, right? We're going to be aggressive. We're going to try to push the envelope, and those things don't always work. But the benefit is it's on film now, and people have to prepare for that stuff, right? So there's always benefits to doing it, even if it doesn't, in that case, create a 2-point conversion for us.
Not that it probably makes you feel any better. Doesn't go against the stats, so he's still perfect. But
he did have an incompletion at Florida last year,
yeah,
too, on a muddle huddle. So
so at this point of the season, right, heading into the 5th game, and I know for multiple positions, but especially for you, I'm sure it becomes more of a headache because now you're hitting that threshold of, okay, who's going to be redshirted, who's not. How much does that at this time start to factor in, and could we start to see more veteran guys pop up in some of these spots moving forward?
It's definitely a juggling act, and it's something that we track very closely, and we're very strategic. And I'm constantly in communication with the position coaches and the coordinators about who is likely to play in this game and who are you maybe trying to hold back to make sure that our special teams depth chart also reflects that. You want to be very strategic about where and when you're using those guys and try to get the most bang for your buck when you're doing it. So those are conversations that we're always having early in the week.
What was your perspective on the 54-yard field goal that they hit? I guess pre-snap there was a shift.
Yeah. I would say that I think it's a good rule because some of these long snappers have been targeted, not like intentionally targeted, but have been beat up pretty good. So I understand the nature of the rule or the intent of the rule to not be completely covering them like a center can be on an offensive or defensive play. But I also think there's, it's almost hard not to at least be somewhere, with a foot, over his foot. And so, it is what it is. It was unfortunate timing on the call because it ended up being a 3-point swing there before the half. I can tell you this, we had no intent of covering the snapper. Boogie was trying to shade the guard. So I think it was just bad timing. And but you've got to, that's why those guys wear stripes, right? They got to try to make the best decision they can make.
You mentioned the hands team for a second there. When you're going into building that, is that just as simple as getting the guys with the best hands? Is there blocking assignments? How do you go about building a unit that you maybe, like you said, use once or twice a year?
Yeah, so it's put a lot of thought into who and then where. And, there's certain guys, like if you watch that play closely, there's a lot of moving parts on that play. And so you're thinking, all right, where could the ball potentially go? Where are certain guys going to be if certain things happen? So I felt really good after that play was over that, we had the right guy in the right spot, and being aggressive is a big part of it. Last year we had one that didn't go our way, and it wasn't that we didn't have the right people. It was that they weren't aggressive enough in making a full speed decision. So it was good to see DK do that, and appreciate the focus that those guys have. There might be a freshman who's got good hands, But if he hasn't been through some battles and doesn't understand everything that goes into that play, you might be a little bit more nervous about having him out there versus, a guy who's sat in that room with you for 3 years and seen a lot of those, things that I've presented in the meetings and goes out there and is going to be locked in. And certainly he was in that situation.
Yeah, as a follow-up to what Hale asked on that, the shade rule, how often do you see that called versus the amount of times that rule is actually broken? Shane said the other day that Hunter Rogers always has somebody over the top of him and gets licked. And just curious how often you see it called versus.
Yeah, I think you're on it. I think there are times that it probably doesn't get called because the umpire understands that the intent of that player is not to cover him. And so even if there's a little gray, maybe the umpire is saying, you know what, I understand he's trying to double team that guard and knock the guard back, not knock the long snapper back. And so they let it go. And, this one was one where, in this guy's judgment, it was, he played it a little bit more by the book. So, I guess I'm one of those guys that, if it's egregious, call it. And if it's not, let them play. But that's not my decision. So, you just gotta live with it and keep moving.
Since we brought up Hunter Rogers' name, he asked me to bring up a question to you as to why him and some of the other specialists don't have nicknames, and what will it take for them to get a nickname from you?
What will it take? Well, you gotta keep in mind too. There's some nicknames that are not PG-13 rated either. So I've gotta save those for our meeting rooms. No, we got a great bunch of guys, and they're working hard, and those specialists are great guys. And as I mentioned last week, nobody pushes themselves harder to get the job done and do it the right way than them. They take a lot of pride in what they do. So we need another really good performance out of them this week. All right. Thanks so much. Back to work. All right.